Oregon homeless advocates worry about Trump's plan to end homelessness. More misery. What are they talking about? No, Trump's approaching it from a treatment first, and these losers are approaching it from harm reduction, which is all harm, no reduction. Just let the addicts get treatment whenever they want to. They'll get to it eventually. You can't, good things take time. You can't force anything. And Trump is saying, no, 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 no. Treatment first. You get sober and then we'll work with you. But other than that, yeah, this is coming. And so these homeless advocates, they're like, oh, this isn't good. More misery is coming. Is it? Is it? Let's get into it. Here we go.
We will use every tool, lever, and authority to get the homeless off our streets.
This is brand new at 6 to 9. President-elect Donald Trump's strategy to end homelessness. He pitched a plan during his campaign, but the big question now is, will it happen? And if it does, how will it impact communities here in the Northwest? Good evening. Thanks a lot for joining us, everybody. I'm Steve Dunn.
And I'm Deborah Knapp. K2's Angelica Thornton has more on what Trump wants to do that has advocates sounding the alarm.
Our once great cities have become unlivable, unsanitary nightmares, surrendered to the homeless, the drug addicted, and the violent and dangerously deranged.
Like the dude who stabbed 10 people here in Seattle? Not last weekend, but the weekend before. You mean like that guy, the convicted 9-time felon with 30 misdemeanors? You mean like that guy that randomly went around and stabbed other homeless people? Him? Yeah. So when people say, oh, Trump's just full of shit. Well, not so much. This is literally the storyline. He's spitting truth.
That was Donald Trump last year talking about his Agenda 47 policy on homelessness and how he would tackle the crisis at the national level.
The homeless have no right to turn every park and sidewalk into a place for them to squat and do drugs. Americans should not have to step over piles of needles and waste.
Absolutely true. 100% true. I mean, it just is. And you know what the libtards say? It's going to be more misery. Well, having people die of fentanyl overdoses out on the street, that's pretty miserable too, right? Having to step over all this crap and just deal with this endless cycle of crap, that's pretty miserable too.
As they walk down a street.
Trump says he wants to work with states to ban urban camping wherever possible and create large tent cities on inexpensive land where people would have access to doctors and social workers.
That's what you guys have been asking for forever. Sean, if we just gave them their own island, if they just had their own island, well, inexpensive land in the industrial area, right? Yeah, so you can't smell them. Huh. And put a bunch of doctors down there. Yeah, get them clean or whatever. I don't know if that's the answer, but doing something at this point, yeah, that's, at least he's talking about it. What did Biden say about homelessness? Does he understand there's a homeless? Does he know that he's the president still? I'm not even sure that Sleepy Joe knows he's still the president. See him walking the other day on sand and he made that look difficult.
Violators of these bans will be arrested, but they will be given the option to accept treatment and services if they're willing to be rehabilitated. Many of them don't want that.
He's absolutely just speaking the truth. How many times have we talked about this? Dozens and dozens and dozens of times. Most of these folks don't want rehabilitation. They just want to live on the streets, game the system, and do their drugs. Do their drugs and, do whatever it takes to keep that lifestyle going. And Trump is saying no. Trump is going after treatment first philosophy, which is don't give them housing first, give them treatment, because treatment is housing, right? After you get them squared away, then they can get housing, get back on their feet doing that. But just throwing people into housing, housing first, it does nothing. And this whole harm reduction concept of here's a clean needle so you can shoot up and not get hepatitis C is just so demented, right? And it just enables these addicts to keep their lifestyle going of doing drugs.
We'll give them the option.
Trump has talked a lot about what's happening in West Coast cities, including Portland. Now that he's president-elect, his plan could be put into play in just a matter of months, pushing aside housing-first policies for his treatment-first model.
I think when President Trump gets around to pushing forward on this agenda item, then he's going to find a lot of sympathetic ears on the West Coast to this sort of Guatemala plan that he toyed with during his first administration.
But homeless advocate Jimmy Jones says this isn't a Trump problem. He says it matters less who's driving the car when it's headed down the same road. And that road, Jones says, is criminalizing homelessness.
No, it's very consistent with what the Portland leadership has tried to do for the last couple of years. And I think that may be very shocking to folks who might think that their local government was aligned with somebody that they never would have voted for under any condition at all in their head. But in terms of, practical policy implementation, it is virtually identical to the work that's already been done.
Jones
And part of that is because this whole concept of, hey, we're a big blue city and we're compassionate for our fellow, human being that is wildly addicted to drugs. It has torn cities apart. And Portland is probably the number one example of how allowing homelessness and drug abuse to, rule the streets, how much of an impact on a city that has. Nobody wants to run a big business there. Everybody's moving out. They don't want to deal with the downtown core. It's gotten better. But ultimately, this has left an enormous scar on Portland that is not coming off anytime soon. And it's because of this misguided compassion of, just let them do whatever they want. It should work out fine. Well, how's that working out for you? I mean, look at this stuff. I mean, you gave them a free tent. You gave them free water. There's probably a bunch of free clothes in there. There's a bunch of free crack pipes in there. There's a bunch of, and taxpayers, you guys are paying for all that stuff. So how about pay for the treatment first? Hey, you can get treatment or you can go to jail. What do you want? Which would you like to do? Help us help you. Because there's really, at this point in time in the game, there's no involuntary commitment. And a lot of these people belong in a psych ward to begin with, or jail, or treatment, or a combination, right? But we've just had this whole misguided notion of compassion that letting people live on the sidewalk in a tent is somehow compassionate. I don't understand that at all. How far up your ass is your head when you think that this is compassionate, letting people live like this? I mean, and then the rest of society has to, walk past them on the sidewalk, or they just don't go there, right? They just don't deal with it. Downtown Portland? Pass. I don't think so. We're not doing that. And that's what happens, right?
And other advocates in Oregon are worried that House Bill 3115, which lawmakers passed in 2021, will be repealed. The law was meant to enshrine a legal standard set by federal judges that cities and towns could not ban people from sleeping outside unless shelter space is available as an alternative.
So bad.
But this summer, the U.S. Supreme Court sided with the city of Grants Pass, finding that camping bans do not amount to cruel and unusual punishment under the Eighth Amendment. Since then, Democrats have joined Republicans calling for changes to state camping laws.
Our city is suffering right now. We're having an identity crisis.
Portland Mayor-elect Keith Wilson ran on an ambitious promise to end unsheltered homelessness within the first year of his administration. He wants to set up a network of night and day shelters in buildings like churches and community centers, offering meals, showers, laundry, and social services. Wilson says it'll immediately improve living.
The problem is most of these folks don't want to live in a shelter system. Most of these people don't want to live by rules. Most of these people want to keep doing their drugs out on the streets in their encampments because there's a sense of safety, believe it or not, for them. Now, the women might get treated, like a sex object, but you got to work past that. That is an ongoing daily thing. At one point in time, there was a predator known to be going around and just having his way with women in the homeless community in Portland, and his name was the Viper. So literally, you've got these stories going on, but this notion here of, we're just going to have a bunch of outreach places that people can go. They don't want to go there. They want to keep doing their drugs. So until you address that part of the equation, none of this is going away. And this concept of, if we just had more space for these people to go to, they'd be better off. No, you got to force them into treatment at some point. That's the real, elephant in the room.
Ability, and it'll give homeless services providers the breathing room they need to work on long-term solutions to keep people off the streets. K2 asked Wilson what he thinks about President-elect Trump's strategy.
It makes me cringe. When you aggregate misery, you just create more misery. We have to recognize that these are our brothers and sisters. I mean, my brother was addicted and homeless. I'm caring for him right now. I can't imagine you doing that. That creates an amount of suffering on a magnitude that's never before seen.
I'm very encouraged by.
Well, we've never before seen the level of homelessness because we've allowed this misguided compassion to rule our decisions, which is, just let them live wherever the F they want. How'd that work out for you there, Sparky? How'd that work out for you? And how'd that work out in that last election for you? Yeah. Well, anyway.
By that language.
Jimmy Jones hopes Portland will change course under Wilson's leadership, but he knows elected officials in every city and town across Oregon and other states are under a lot of pressure to fix livability issues.
Folks are just deeply and gravely uncomfortable by observing other people's poverty. They don't want to see it. They don't want it to be visible. They'd rather it go somewhere else. And these solutions take time. They take patience. They take commitment. They take smart public policy choices.
Jones says of all of the items on Trump's agenda, this might be the one with the most buy-in from the right and the left. He warns the message may sound good, but the methods will be brutal, that the medicine is worse than the cure.
This is how I will end the scourge of homelessness and make our cities clean and safe and beautiful once again. We will do it. We will bring back America.
Angelica Thornton, K2 News.
Here's the issue. I mean, and unless you've spent a fair amount of time in a homeless encampment, which I hope most of you haven't, or just been around it, a handful of hours at a time, and that's typically my gig, doing some, just filming, somebody doing outreach, that kind of thing. You don't realize how down and out these folks are, but oftentimes it's because of their own choice. They got people coming by asking them, hey, can we get you some help? Can we get you into treatment? There's people out there doing that all day long. And you know what they say? Nope, I'm just not quite there yet. So until you get to that part, you don't move the needle here at all. And a lot of these people have criminal records, and a lot of these people have some severe mental issues. And that is why they're literally living in a tent down by the river. You hate to go there with Chris Farley, but it's true. Living in a van down by the river. It's that ultimate down and out. But we've got so many people that are down and out. But you know what? They are living the way that they want to do. They just want to drug it up. Don't really care about tomorrow. This is the ride they're in. And the rest of society just has to deal. We are being told by our government officials, just deal with it. Just deal with it. Now, the new incoming mayor-elect for Portland, he's like, I can't imagine the, lack of compassion. Well, what about the citizens on a daily basis in Portland? It's one thing to keep it weird. I get that. But you got a lot of regular citizens who are saying, no, this isn't the way that we should be living. What's wrong with you? You've just got a wacky, totally misguided sense of compassion. And you know what? At some point in time, you got to come in with a little tough love. And I think Daddy Trump, that's what he's pointing at. He's pointing at just a scooch of tough love. Now, whether he can get support by both sides of the aisle, I don't know. And what does this actually look like? So where is he actually going to put these people? Right? You're going to have these big, encampments like we saw in Scarface for the illegals. Remember that at the beginning of the movie? Just big encampments underneath the freeway. We've already seen that, but I'm talking about, barbed wire and just literally keeping them in there. Because otherwise, these people are going to get out. And we've already seen what they do when they're out. Dude who killed 10 people 2 weekends ago in Seattle with 3 kitchen knives. Kitchen knives. Left one stuck in a guy's back because he's whacked out of his mind. They're all running around doing drugs. It's a terrible way for these folks to be allowed to live, and yet we've allowed it to happen. So maybe we don't allow it to happen. And I think that's what Trump's talking about. But then you've got the advocates that are like, it's going to be so much anguish. These people are already dying as we're watching them. So how much worse can it get? It's going to be terrible. All right. Let's see if we got anything else here. Yeah, our once great cities have become unlivable, unsanitary nightmares surrendered to the homeless. That sounds like Skid Row. That sounds like a lot of downtown Portland. Sounds like a lot of areas of Seattle right now. The drug addicted and the violent and the dangerously deranged. That's not him just talking out of his you-know-what either. That is literally, you've just described big swaths of Seattle that are just kind of, let them live. Be compassionate. Okay. The homeless have no right to turn every park and sidewalk into a place for them to squat and do drugs. It's an idea, right? Just put their tent up. You know what? They don't even put their tent up. You know what they do? You can call a number. Hey, I'm over here. Can you bring me a tent? And they'll just drive on over and bring you a effing tent. I mean, it's so dumb. Make it hard. Make it terrible. Make it terrible. It's like you want prison to be terrible. So people don't have, this idea. It's great. I think I'll go there again. People who put their kids in drug treatment or alcohol treatment that, it's basically just a country club. Make it a terrible experience so they go, good Lord, I don't want to get back on that stuff. That was terrible. I had to go through treatment. Man, that was horrific. Terrible. That's the way you want it to be. So there's a little pushback on them wanting to do that again. Americans should not have to step over piles of needles and waste as they walk down the street. 100%. That's a no-go, right? It's a no-go. It's just absolutely absurd. So, yeah, the new mayor in Portland, Wilson, ran on an ambitious promise to end unsheltered homelessness within the first year of his administration. That is not going to work. We got to be honest. That is not going anywhere. That is not going to work. He wants to set up a network of night and day shelters. These folks don't want to be in a shelter because they like to do their drugs. I don't know why it's so hard for people to see that. If we could just get them housing, they'll be good. No, you got to get them treatment. Treatment is housing. See how that works? It's genius, right? So night and day shelters and buildings like churches and community centers offering meals, showers, laundry, and social work services. How about we just straight up put them to work? What about that? And if you can't work, if you're like physically or mentally not able to work, then we got to figure something else for you. But you can't just run around and sit on the sidewalk all day doing your drugs and, just hunched over, Kensington Avenue style. Can't be doing that either. Wilson says it'll immediately improve livability and give homeless providers the breathing room they need to work on long-term solutions to keep people off the streets. We emptied out all of our insane asylums. We don't have enough bandwidth in treatment. Plus, treatment, you can't involuntarily put somebody in treatment. And so that doesn't leave, put them in jail, put them in prison. I mean, unless they've committed a crime, that kind of goes against everything we're talking about. But Sean, that's the only other place we've got to put them. Okay. Portland isn't going to, involuntarily incarcerate somebody because they're on drugs. That's just never happening. So where does that leave us? It leads us with a whole bunch of people doing drugs on the sidewalk out in public in Portland, in Seattle, in LA, in Oakland, in New York City. It's the way I see it. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. Love to have you subscribe, do all that good stuff. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.